All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the Restoration Success Show. We got the next episode here, and we have Andrew joining us today, coming from Oregon. So, welcome, Andrew. Happy to have you here. So, let's just start this out. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and kind of how you ended up in the restoration industry.
What's up, Mr. Jaime? Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
No problem.
I think I ended up in restoration like a lot of folks accidentally. Uh, I needed a job, right? We all needed a job at one point in time, and this industry, I think, is unique in that once you get sucked in to restoration, it's very hard to extract yourself.
Yep, yep.
It gets into your blood. Early on, I got addicted to that feeling of showing up and being the freaking hero. Um, because whether you want to believe it or not, we are heroes. With that person that shows up, um, when the water is flowing, right? When that basement is full, and the homeowners are panicking, that person to show up to help them with that problem is a freaking hero. So I got pretty addicted to that feeling early on, and it just stuck with me. So. I've been doing uh, it, a lot of different aspects of restoration for the better part of 22 years at this point. So the year 2000 to 2000, 2001, so 23 years now. Um, and the last decade or so, I've been running a company called Claims Delegates, which helps contractors write exact-made estimates. And so that's more and more, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, I've seen the need to reduce overhead, bring things in-house more and control operations, centralizing the estimating function of your company. The bigger you get, if you have a central estimating hub, you're able to realize some pretty good economies of scale and cost savings and overhead savings and things like that. So that's been what I'm focusing on last couple of years is helping folks realize those economies of scale through reducing their overhead and increasing their throughput on their estimating. So I've got a team of Xactimate guys that all we do all day, every day is write sheets. So it's been fun. And the last couple years with private equity, it's been we're only just getting started, I think.
Yeah, what did you because I have some friends that have sold to private equity and yeah, it kind of seems, I mean, based on some of the conversation I've had, I think private equity is coming in pretty hard to home service industries as a whole, like
Hmm.
HVAC, roofing. I mean,
Hmm.
restoration would fall under that. Are there any trends specifically or anything you've seen as of late as far as when it comes to private equity and restoration industry as a whole?
Well, the whole deal, you have to understand what the purpose is. The purpose is I have this bucket of money that I've been told I need to spend, and I got to get a certain return on it. I've got to get a 20 or 30% return on that money. Well, the fund guys themselves are looking for a 3x return, right? So how do you do that? Well, you buy a business and grow it. You buy a business, make it more efficient, or you buy a bunch of businesses and consolidate them and eliminate all the redundant expenses with all the other ones. So it's a pretty simple playbook, uh, but it's that you can see the big players out there. So ATI is one of the biggest ones that I think everyone can point to and see they're playing this playbook is they got bought, and Jeff Moore was told, here's a bucket of money, now go buy your way, you got to go spend this money. And so they've bought up a whole bunch of folks, but one of the first things they do is look at, their ATIs was big to start out with, but they have a really good organized core in Anaheim at their flagship office where they can run a lot of the admin stuff, including estimating, out of one office. And so they buy a business in New England. Well, that estimator no longer has a job, right? Because they've got that covered. Now all they need to do is get the information over to the central office, and they can write estimates all day, every day. So that's the playbook. Is where can we find the efficiencies? Where can we find um, these cost savings? And then ultimately, that's going to be resold again, right? These
Mhm.
businesses are being bought and sold and bought and sold and just repackaged. But the redesign, the fundamental redesign that these businesses go through in the PE world is unique. Um, and so what I'm seeing is a lot of guys, there's a sweet spot in there, 5 to 10 million. So I know ATI was looking for $10 million players because he needed to buy 20 companies at 10 million a piece. And so these businesses, once you get to 10 million, you start getting calls from private equity. And a lot of these
Mhm.
guys I talk to, a lot of my clients, once they crest over 5 million, they started getting phone calls. They started getting random emails. Hey,
Mhm.
you want to sell? You want to sell? You want to sell? And then the focus becomes how do I change my business? How do I format my restoration business so it's more attractive so I can get a bigger multiplier when I do sell?
Mhm. And I imagine that's, because you touched on this a minute ago. I mean, I imagine you and your company are going to be able to really help out in the next few years. Is, like I said, a piece of this would be having the estimating department centralized, have the SOPs in place, the estimates dialed in, and that could be spread out across, all the restoration companies under the main umbrella, right? Like
Yep.
you could help them with one piece of that puzzle.
Yeah,
Um,
and not just save the overhead costs, but do the function more economically, more efficiently, right?
mhm,
So I know if all we're doing, and that's what all we do at Claims Delegates is write sheets all day, every day, we get really, really good at it. Where your average right run project manager estimator, they're wearing 4 or 5 hats in a day, right? And estimating is just one of the functions they perform. So they're never going to be as good as somebody like us. They never
mhm,
can be, just as function of reality. Um, so increasing your specialization actually increases your profitability because you write better sheets, they're better documented, you're making more, your profitability of each individual estimate or invoice goes up just naturally as a function of bringing that all into a centralized function.
mhm. I imagine that's helped your company out too. It's like, hey, we can help you with a handful of things, but estimating is our bread and butter, and we are dangerously good at it. That's
Yeah.
kind of how we positioned it from the marketing standpoint. It's like we
Hmm.
don't pretend we
Hmm.
don't work with doctors, lawyers. It's like restoration companies. You know what I mean? Because that way we've
Yep.
seen it
Yep.
basically all at this point. We've worked in all the markets. So it's kind of like you have the proven blueprint system. You just need to deploy it, then optimize it and tweak it as you go. Like that's kind of helped. I imagine both of us in our companies as far as like, hey, like we can't be everything to everybody. We're going to be
Mm.
very good at this particular niche. So we're going to run with
Yeah,
it.
and it's for years people have outsourced there's fractional accounting,
Yep.
right? There's fractional CFOs, there's fractional CEOs. Well, we can be your fractional estimators, and you can be the fractional marketing department, right? There's if you can't get the best, if you can't hire the best in any given discipline, you might as well just go buy it, go rent it,
Mm-hmm.
because you're always going to be forcing, if you don't have the best player, you're always going to, if you can't train them up, you're always playing with a second best. So, so don't try to pretend that you're the expert marketing person. Just go rent the expert marketing person.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had some mentors of mine. I mean, tell me just over the years, like they're like, look, it's going to take time or money to grow and scale a business successfully. You get
Yep.
to pick one, and when you're starting out, you're probably going to put in more time than money. As you grow and scale, you got to buy
Hmm.
back your time, focus on more
Hmm.
important things. And I think that's something that people don't realize. Like to get the experience you or I might have already doing in our world. It's like I was like, I don't think you understand that we've managed millions in ad spend and learned those lessons now. Like you're paying for the speed and the experience to shortcut it.
Right.
And if you and like from our perspective, like, if you want to, you can go build this out on your own, but like, are you ready to pay a six-figure salary just for the SEO piece? Like,
Yeah.
just the SEO
Right.
piece. Like, you can't
Right.
go watch a YouTube video and like, this is like, like you and I are talking about, this is a big boy game. It's gonna take time or money. You get to pick one. And
Yeah.
that's the
And
same way when it comes to estimating. Like, you can
can
try to
you
piece it all
go
together.
can you
Uh,
go recruit a guy that wrote $2 billion worth of estimates last year? No,
exactly.
doesn't exist. But we did. So
Yeah, and that's yeah. So that is a good. I'm glad we touched on that because that is a good perspective. I think that'll help our listeners out and like, and I think that plays into all facets of growing and scaling a restoration company, not just the
mhm.
estimating, not just the marketing. I mean, you got sales, HR, ops, systems, processes, finance. Like, this can be deployed in all of those facets to help. I mean, to expedite the process, right? You're going to learn one way or another, or I always say this quote, but success leaves clues is a quote I love to like,
Mm,
hey, we're
I
not
like it.
reinventing the wheel here. There's people that have done this ahead of us. Why don't we learn from them and shortcut the
Yep.
process?
Just copy it.
Um,
There's no shame in copying what works.
yeah. And then you can, add your little secret sauce on and innovate to differentiate yourself from the competition and roll with it. So when it comes, kind of back to estimating and stuff, what are some of I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of mistakes, but maybe there might be one or two mistakes that stand out from the others that you see a
Sure.
lot of restoration companies make. Like, what are those mistakes typically that you see, the biggest ones?
Yeah, we gotta, yeah, as you might imagine, people come in at different stages and different levels of expertise, and we've got to spend a considerable amount of what we do is coaching guys up. Right out of the gate, the vast majority of new clients come in with a deficiency of documentation. They don't have a system to document losses. They don't have a process to do it, and you can have the best. Like I'm a huge fan of Matterport, right? Matterport scanning, you get a 3D model, you get everything you can measure, and down to it's laser accurate and everything else. But that doesn't having a Matterport scan or having 1,000 pictures doesn't get you a scope. So one of the first things I coach people into is here's how you develop a scope, and this is what a real good scope looks like. Because a lot of these guys are just thrown into it. A lot of these guys didn't know what they were getting into. There's franchise operators that they were real estate agents last year, and they just bought a Rainbow franchise or something. Um, and they just in the Rainbow franchise said, well, it's all in there, right? It's just follow the book. Well, the scoping is one of the biggest blind points of everyone that I see. People don't understand what it means to tell a story. And when you take your estimating function out of your operation and do a nearshore like with claims delegates, it becomes incredibly important to be able to tell that story. And the scope is a story of the loss. So yeah, that's the number one thing is can you tell a good enough story that someone who isn't on site and never will be on site can write a complete accurate estimate. That's the hardest thing. Um, and the number two, I mean, there's several. So documentation and scoping, and then uh, 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 the what we've been doing the last couple years, I've been refocusing on is the collections piece because there's a vast misunderstanding of how you actually get paid. And if you're sending estimates and invoices to the adjuster and waiting for a response, your accounts receivable is going to be way higher than it needs to be. And it's not uncommon to see accounts receivables over 90 days, 120 days. And I've had some clients with 100% of their annual revenue stuck in AR.
Mm,
So they're in a position where they have to run double time because they're getting paid, they have half of the actual revenue they've realized because the other half is stuck in AR because they're not going about the collections process appropriately. And they're relying too much on the goodwill of insurance carriers to do the right thing. And that's the probably the number two lesson that I have to teach guys when they're coming in, when they're brand new with us, is the carrier's never going to willingly do the right thing. It's up to us to properly frame the claim. And this might come as a shock to some of you listening out there. You have to actually bill your client. And it's amazing how many restorers still today never send a bill to the insured. They never send a bill to their client. And I've said it 1,000 times, and I'll keep saying it. How is someone supposed to pay you? How is someone supposed to pay a bill that they've never received? And in the mentality of, well, I have to get approval through the insurance adjuster first. Well, that's why your money is stuck in accounts receivable. That's why you're not getting paid, because the adjuster's not responsible for your bill. And that's so a lot of the stuff we do at Claims Delegates is a mindset shift of we need to understand who the client is. And that's where really, I mean, you found me through the Rebels, and a lot of people are going to recognize the Restoration Rebels. That's what we do at the Restoration Rebels is, hey, we need to understand fundamentally who the actual client is. Then we need to empower and educate that client on the claim process, because like it or not, restoration guys don't have very much leverage, right? What are the things we have that we have leverage on? We can file a lien and we can send someone to collections, but we can't sue the homeowner, or we can't sue the carrier, right? We can't even apply leverage to the carrier. The only person that can apply leverage to the carrier is the homeowner, is the insured, because they're the policyholder. And we forget that. And we wonder why we have millions of dollars in receivables that we haven't been paid. And then the carrier comes at us with these 50 cents on a dollar offers, and we feel compelled to take them because we feel like we don't have any other options. And it's a sad downward cycle. Um, I don't want to get started down that whole
Yeah.
TPA road, but so it's the mindset of who the client is and what is. There's some people that just feel guilty about profit, and we need to remove the guilt from. We're in business to make money. The insurance company's in business to make money. There's no shame in high profitability work. Now, if you're not doing quality work, yeah, you should be ashamed for charging. If you're not doing premium work, you shouldn't be charging a premium dollar. But if you get up in the middle of the night on a weekend to go under somebody's house and suck poop out of their crawl space, well, I'm going to be 50 this year. I don't do that anymore. You can't pay me enough to do that. And that service needs to come with a premium. And when the adjuster comes back and says, "Well, you charge too much," my reply is, "Well, you should have been there. You should have been in that 6 inches of sewage that we were crawling through. Because until you are, you can't say that my bill was exorbitant, because it's not. I charged a fair rate for doing that thing. Because there's a lot of people in the world that would not get into a sewage filled crawl space. Let's just be real. And
Mhm.
adjusters are the number one on that list. They will never be out there. So
Mhm.
you can't tell me what is a good price to charge unless you've done the actual work.
Yeah, that makes me think of we have some clients that do crime scene cleanup stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, as
Mm-hmm.
far as difficult job, they're like, Jamie, our the thing we struggle with most on those jobs is finding people willing to do it. They're like, you talking about a
Yep.
messy, uncomfortable job? They're like, it's awful, but they're like, somebody's got to do it.
It's real. Someone's got
Yeah.
to do it. And it's with crime scene cleanup and that things like that, it's the mental and emotional stress. It's less about the hazard, the actual hazard. Um, it's arguable that There's no more hazard in a crime scene than there is in a sewer, right? It's all contamination, but it's the mental load of what happened there. So I've done a couple, right? The first company I worked for, Dow Columbia in Portland, Oregon, we were pretty much the go-to company for crime scene cleanup and death stuff. Um, and I went to a couple, but yeah, after the first couple, I just said, no, I can't do it. It
Yeah.
wrecked me, like wrecked me. I don't want to get too graphic, but so the last one I was at, it turned into a fire because this lady was on oxygen, and she decided it would be a good idea to light a cigarette while she was on her oxygen.
Hmm.
Um, but you could see the fire line where the uh, the tube of oxygen was on fire, and it went down to the carpet, and it went down and it went into the bathroom. And then she got up and went to the bathroom because I don't know what was happening, but just the evidence that I was seeing, I could replay the actual incident in my mind, and it just disturbed me. So it was like it takes a unique human being to compartmentalize that. And when you have people that performing that role, they need more time off than normal. So yeah, there's all kinds of costs. Mental and emotional costs are the ones that are hardest to quantify, but they're very, very real. You should charge a premium for that. That should be $300 an hour, right? And there's
Yeah.
no shame in that because that work still has to get done.
Yeah. Do some of your clients do, I imagine, do you have clients that do cash pay and claims? They do both?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. That's, a lot of our clients do as well. I was just curious. 'Cause,
And there's yeah, I would caution folks to whether it doesn't matter who's paying the bill doesn't change. There's guys that'll have two different price lists. They're
mhm.
essentially running two different companies, but it's dangerous. It's dangerous to do that because, um, especially if the insurance company gets wind that you charge less for cash pay. There's guys that are in legal trouble because of that, because the carriers will say, well, that's fraud. You're just jacking the prices because we're involved. So
Mhm.
there's no, I mean, the money is the same color, no matter where it's coming from. So make sure your prices are the same.
Yeah. And I think that's where, I mean, yeah, it's like you're not trying to like pull it, anybody listens, obviously not trying to like pull anything on anybody. Like, don't be adding fluff items in there. But, I think what they can learn from you, what they should learn is like, you deserve to get paid what you deserve to get paid, and make sure you're including everything in that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To have a full fledged, properly written estimate so you can get paid, and therefore can lead to the profit you deserve.
Hmm.
Like I said, because everybody listening here, like if you're not making a profit, then you're running a charity. If you want to run a charity, run a charity. But at the end of the day, you got people to pay, bills to
Yep.
pay. And then if
Yep.
you want to take some of those
Yep.
profits and donate to charity, that's a good thing. Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. But it's you got to pick. You got to pick one or the other, right? Like I said, you can
Yes, you
always
do.
contribute to the charity, but you got to make money. So I
Yeah.
think that's where learning the proper way to write the estimates and manage the claim process from people like yourself could be super beneficial.
Now,
Um,
that being said, there's a very real cost to managing the claim process. So when it comes to cash pay, um, if someone is willing to pay my bill and I don't have to go through this dance with the insurance company back and forth, there's value there for me, and I'm willing to reduce my bill in acknowledgement of that value. So in that way, you can justify charging less to a homeowner who's going to pay you up front because you don't have to go through this process to get paid. Um, but that's it. Yeah, there's there's ways around the fraud accusation. if you're going to charge less to homeowners. And the reason is going to cost you less. Because if your money, excuse me, your money in accounts receivable is costing you money. That
Mhm.
dollar 6 months from now is not worth a dollar anymore.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I think
that's
there's.
something a lot of guys don't really take into account.
Yeah, I mean, you know better than me, but I remember this from my construction days too. It always seems like whoever's paying the bill or whoever's getting the job done, there's always seems to be a little resistance when it comes to including overhead in
Mm,
this. But I mean, because I used to help build hospitals, schools, like huge projects. The overhead number would be hundreds and hundreds of thousands. But we're like, you got senior project manager, regular project manager, field engineers assisting these guys, estimator. Like the overhead's a real thing. It's like, well, this thing isn't managing itself, so it's a line item on the estimate. And I mean, but there was always a little bit of back and forth on that. And then when it came to
mm,
change orders, like, dude, I'm sitting here in your office negotiating this with you. Like, my time is not free. Like, let me remind you of that. Like, this is a line item for a reason. You
yep,
need to pay it. I mean, but
yep.
again, you have to be ethical about it. You can't try to like add fluff in there. People, project managers working on other jobs should not be included on that. But that was always a thing for sure. Um,
Well, that's the concept of general conditions. That comes from construction. That comes from big construction, right? And your general conditions is customarily set at the beginning of the job, and
yep,
then every change order, it's a percentage that gets added to that change order based on your general conditions, right?
yep,
That's a concept that is like I try to explain that to an adjuster, and it's like I'm speaking Chinese.
yeah,
It's like all they hear is Mandarin and overhead and profit, and it's just like I've been advocating that yes, don't ignore the overhead. Don't ignore that you have actual costs. Don't ignore the fact you need to make a profit, but bake it in. Bake it into your pricing and don't show it because every time we show it, it creates an argument.
hmm,
So it's
yeah,
easier for me to say, this is my pricing rather than trying to justify this additional line item because when you put overhead and profit, you're just showing it, right? It's out there.
yeah,
And it gives them something to latch in on and argue about.
yeah, yeah. I think it's just learning. Yeah, I mean, like I said, with somebody like your experience, you've seen enough of them, and you know like what's going to be a flag and what's not going to get flagged. And it's almost like you've played the game so many times, you know the rules of the game. And again, not that you're trying to do anything wrong, but you're just going to play the game properly, get paid what you
Right.
deserve to get paid, take care of the home. Like you want it to be a win-win for everybody involved in the process. And so everybody can move on. It's just, but it's just not. It's easier said than done. That's the tricky part, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's
Well, there's actual rules and then there's perceived implied rules. And I'm a huge fan of if it's not an actual rule, I don't have to follow it. Um, if the rule says if I get the football across the line, the goal line, that's 6 points. That's the rule. But but trying to say how I got the ball there was wrong because my internal guidelines says so. That's what we're dealing with right now is the industry. There's it's just a huge problem of you can't charge overhead and profit unless you have three or more trades, or you can't charge overhead and profit unless the job is complicated enough. And guess what? All of a sudden, there's no job that's complicated enough to justify overhead and profit. These you can't charge supervisory hours. Just these rules, right? A lot of them came from the programs, but these rules aren't really rules because as independent restorers, we're not part of the TPAs, we're not part of the programs. And when the insured bought that policy, there wasn't a claim booklet that came with it that says this is how you're going to estimate this job. There's no policy in the land that says you will use Xactimate. But how often do we as restorers get that email from the adjuster that says, well, I need you to put this in Xactimate. I can only pay Xactimate pricing. Well, those are two rules that don't exist. And so,
Yeah.
back to the coaching, I coach my guys, hey, I'm all about following the rules. Follow the actual rules, but don't follow these implied rules, because those are the rules that change. Those are the goalposts that change on you. And you can't play a football game when the goalposts are moving.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And I think, I mean, you tell me if you agree, disagree, but I think the tricky part about this industry too is you mentioned this earlier, like eh, from the insurance company's perspective, like they're a for-profit business. They know that the higher the amount, like that, and I don't know if we didn't talk about this. I don't want to go deep into it, but I'm involved in an insurance company, and so we work with carriers, we get appointments. The
Mm,
last few years, we just had this hurricane come through a couple of days ago. Like a lot of these, they're going insolvent. Like when these storms come
yes,
through,
they
they're just
are.
going belly up insolvent. We've seen it the past few years on what when we've been getting appointments. Like it's the wild west over there too. And
Yep.
they're not. I think there's always going to be a little friction between restorers and insurance companies because they're not just going to be like, oh yeah, sure, you think it's 100 grand, here's your check. Like
No.
that's directly affecting them, and sometimes it's directly affecting them where they might go belly up. So they're not just going to stroke the check and not give up a little bit of a fight. And like I said, we could go down a deep rabbit hole on that. But that's the interesting, tricky part about this industry is you got them over here. The stores try to get paid, or they deserve to get paid.
Hmm.
It's wild. It's wild.
It's
Um,
always going to be a fight.
yeah,
And if you think there's a way through this industry without fighting, yeah, you're wrong. You've got to develop a thick skin, and you've got to have a strategy. You got to have a claim strategy of how you're going to approach these things. Um,
yeah.
Ed Cross has a great approach. Ed Cross advocates. Yeah, you're in Florida, right?
South Carolina.
Oh, South Carolina. Okay, so you
Yeah,
guys can have assignment benefits there.
yeah,
You can't in Florida. Um, but the assignment of benefits is another really great tool for restorers to have leverage that a lot of restorers are hesitant to use because it feels too aggressive.
yeah, yeah. And I
Um,
don't. Well, yeah, I mean, you probably know more than me, but because I haven't talked to one of our guys, because we have some clients in Florida, and I mean, I remember the last time, it maybe been 6 months, a year ago since I talked to one of my guys who I'm thinking of. Yeah, Florida, he's like, man, it is because the government has stepped in down there, right, and gotten involved. And he's like, man, it is just he's like, it's a nightmare. Um,
it's the
and
hardest state. It's the hardest state to do restoration work in.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our guy and the guy I'm thinking of in particular, like, I mean, he was a construction company that got into it, so he is a killer. Like, I love these guys because I come from the rebuild recon world, and I know,
Mm.
like, you think these little things are hard. Like, wait till you're doing a $2 million putback. Like, it's a whole different ballgame. But he is very good at it, and he does mid stuff too. But he's like, man, honestly, we're just kind of scaling out that division a little bit more now. We're trying to figure out the whole rest, the mid side of things with the insurance claims because it's just he's like, there's so many things changing. But to keep
Hmm.
revenue coming in and to keep scaling, like he's just kind of pushing and because like I said, it's changing and it's changing rapidly. He's like, man, it's been tricky the past. I don't imagine that getting any better. I mean, especially when we have these storms like what just came through. I mean, they're disastrous for these, because then because that causes premiums to go up, and then the homeowner can't afford the premium. Then it's just like a cycle that just snowballs. It
Yeah, I
affects everybody.
think I think this particular storm is going to be less so because there was so much flood, right? When there's flood, there's NFIP. That's not falling on the insurance carriers in those areas. So
Yeah,
I don't think we're going to see as many because the wind portion of this latest storm wasn't really the driving factor. It was the water. It was the and I think everyone, what happened in South Carolina and even North Carolina, right? It was that no one was like, oh man, the Appalachians are going to flood. No, we weren't thinking that, right?
yeah,
Um, but yeah, and no one was, and it's like, what do you mean there's floods in South Carolina? I thought the storm hit Florida. Well, it did, but uh,
yeah. Not. Yeah, I mean, it
Yeah.
just depends on where you are. Yeah, it's going to be. Yeah, I feel bad too for some of these homes because I know the western part of South Carolina. Because I'm over here on the coast in Charleston, where we're basically under sea level. So depending on where you are, you have to. I mean, you're required if you have a mortgage, you're required to get flood insurance and homeowners.
Yeah.
But a lot of these people in the upstate, I imagine they don't have
No.
flood policies.
Why would you? You're not even
Yeah,
close to, you're not close to the floodplain,
yeah,
right? But the amount of water we saw come down was, well, it was a 1,000-year storm.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but again, that's all NFIP, National Flood Program. That's a different animal altogether.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
But
Oh well,
in Florida, I'll take a flood claim over a regular claim now because of all the limitations on regular homeowners insurance.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, let's shift gears a little bit. So
Sure.
AI is a hot topic these days, and I don't,
Big time.
yeah, and I mean, hopefully people, I'm kind of looking at it as I saw the internet back. Everybody. Well, it's kind of why I started this company. People, my old bosses were like, "Oh, nobody goes to Google when their house floods." I'm like, well, "You can't be serious! Like,
The
what?"
hell they don't.
I know. Well, and this is how I see AI now. Like, it's a big beast, but it is not going to slow down, and it's coming, whether we like it or not. So, I mean, we're working on some things and thinking a lot about it, and how to integrate it and help our guys. I mean, again,
Mm.
for like you said, the efficiencies and the
Mhm.
operational efficiencies and the time saving aspects is going to be a game changer. Have you? I imagine it's gonna. I mean, as far as when it comes to estimates and the claims process, like, what do you see happening in that world when it comes to AI?
Well, I keep hearing um, the versions on this theme of AI is not going to take your job, but a human that's leveraging AI is going to take your job. And there's, we, yeah, the rumor mill and the just the overall sentiment keeps going to this, AGI concept, advanced general intelligence, artificial general intelligence. Um, and yes, once we reach AGI, that's going to be a whole different thing, and we're all kind of screwed at that point, I would think. But until that point, which we're, depends on who you ask, 5, 10 years away from AGI, the person that understands how to use these new tools is going to be at an incredible advantage. And so we've started, there's some AI in what we do. We leverage Xactimate, but we also leverage the actionable insights profile within Xactimate, and that's got some AI back to it. But I fully believe that 5 years from now, there's going to be very little human estimating done. And it's going to be up to the person who is leveraging the AI system of the day to get the best results out of their estimates. So I see, so right now, so let's take what I did yesterday for an example. I drove to Portland yesterday to do an inspection. Put the drone on the roof, did the thing. Automatically, I got a sketch back into Xactimate, directly into Xactimate. I did a Matterport in the house. Automatically, I got a sketch into Xactimate. So those two things traditionally are done by a human being were done automatically and more efficiently and more accurately by a machine for me. In like it was ready for me before I got back. It was 3 hours to Portland and 3 hours back. Before I got back home last night, those resources were there ready for me to start using. I see that, but now I wrote up a scope by hand. I sent it over to my estimator, and he's going to work over the next couple days to write it up. That writing portion of it is going to be automated. But for now, that scoping portion, that telling the story, is still all human. There are things out there. There's an app called a platform called Impartial. It starts with an M, partial. I think it's impartial.io or impartial dot something. That will take a before You do a before demolition scan, Matterport scan, and then you do a post mitigation Matterport scan, and the machine will infer what was done in between. And it'll write, it depends on who you ask, and I've seen it, it'll write a 65% sheet. And then the human has to take it the rest of the way, 35%. That and systems like it are going to get much, much better very quickly. And so I see a near future where there's a 90% AI portion of estimating and a 10% human.
Yeah.
But that 10% human, it needs to be needs to have a different skill set than we have today. So there's going to be a dearth of properly skilled and educated estimators here in the near future. And because if you're not on board with this thing, if you're not learning it now, you're behind. And you will never catch up. Once this thing gets ahead of steam, you will never catch up. So that's why I'm like, everything, I'm playing with everything now. Like this background, like I told you, I told Midjourney to come up with a log and stone cabin on the Deschutes River. And look at it, it's gorgeous. The machine did this with a very short prompt, and it's beautiful, right? This is just the tip of the iceberg. This is just the beginning. I'm excited, frankly, honestly. I'm not fear-mongering. I'm not a oh, it's gonna take all our jobs. And it's just the next iteration, the next natural evolution of, the Industrial Revolution turned a lot of people's worlds upside down. The agricultural revolution turned a lot of people's worlds upside down. It's just evolve or die. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's you got to innovate, right? And if you don't like to
Got
innovate,
to.
yeah, good luck. It's coming whether they like it or not. I mean, I agree with you. I see this as another tool in the tool belt. You
Mm-hmm.
got to learn how to make, just use it as a tool in the tool belt. Start tinkering with it, playing with it. Because I mean, I agree. Like the speed at which the softwares and platforms that out there now, and this is just the beginning, but the amount of updates they release, and then they're like, hey, we just did an update. This one is not 10% better. It's
Oh,
2,000%. But like
it's
the rate
orders
with
of
this they learn, I'm
magnitude.
like, it's scary.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild. But I mean,
Yeah, we're
it's
not,
kind of exciting at the
the
same
days
time.
of incremental improvement are over.
Yeah.
There's not going to be anything incremental about it anymore. So I'm going to start name dropping stuff. Still, Brelly is another platform that was built for public adjusters. And I think it's Brelly.io or something like that. So what I'm able to do is load emails, load insurance policies, load, just claim stuff into Brelly. And then I hit a button that says print a proof of loss. And it'll print out a proof of loss with the insured's name on it correctly, the insurance company, it'll just, or print out a demand letter, and it just does it. I used OpenAI's ChatGPT to create a GPT called Rebel Replies. So I take email strings from adjusters and I use it mainly to rebut Wardlaws and Sedgwicks and third-party administrators. I load the entire email string and I just say, hey, what's an appropriate response? Give me a line-by-line response to their objections. And it just does it because I loaded in the S500. I loaded in some books that I use. I loaded in some of the stuff that I have done over the years, right? I've got my list of objection responses that I've developed over the years, and I just put it in the machine. And now the machine does a better response. It responds more intelligently, more cogently, and quicker than I ever could. So why wouldn't I use it? Right?
Yeah. And you know what I love about it too, because there's been a lot of talk about, a good starting point. I mean, I don't know. There's many places you can start with. But ChatGPT is an easy one that you can start
It's
with.
easy. Yep.
But you got to think about a skill set now is kind of like they're calling it prompt engineering. It's like
Yep.
it's only as good as how you frame it and position it in the beginning, and then it'll go. I've played with that some, and depending on the input you give it, and that's to your point. You better know how to use it right, or you're going to get not what you need. But if you learn how to prompt it correctly, the sky's the limit. And then what's awesome too is you can, with that letter, for example, I've played with this. I'm like, hey, give me 3 variations of it.
Yep.
Within 3 seconds, boom, 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 boom.
Boom,
And
boom,
sometimes
boom.
you can take pieces from each variable, copy them into one, done. Like the amount of time saving and these are like, this is just one example we're talking about. Like it's endless opportunities because
I wrote a course. And I did the course. I made $5,000 from a course that AI wrote most of it.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, that's awesome.
Why wouldn't I?
Yeah. It's and even now with ChatGPT and all that, with you being able to, like I said, that one software you said does this, but even ChatGPT can do this. I mean, you can upload PDFs, files, video, like, and have it just go through it, and then have it summarize it. Like, I mean, and the sky's the limit with it. I get excited about it because I'm like, this is wow. You can just give it, and it doesn't take like 4 hours to read through it or whatever. It just knows like,
No, I mean, look at what it's done to Zoom meetings, right?
Yeah.
I don't have it in this one because we told it, we were recording for this, but ordinarily I'd have Read AI in here.
Yeah.
And then as soon as we're done, Read AI sends me a report. It says, this is what you guys talked about. And here's the action items we recommend you take based on the meeting you just had. It's like, yeah, well, it's almost a lot of it is information overload, I think still. I think we as a society and especially us tech forward people, we've started to adopt too many things, I think. I've reached the point where I've had to actually pull back and go, okay, that's a great, and I could see where it might be useful later on, but right now it's way too much information, right? I don't need another app to give me another 10 things on my to-do list because my to-do list is already full. But what I've actually done, I've got another, AI. I'm on, Jamie. I'm like full in. I'm like both feet into AI. So there's an app I use called Motion, which tracks my calendar, tracks my to-do list from another app, and then it prioritizes it and changes it. And if I don't get it done, guess what? It shows up on my calendar later on. And it's constantly rearranging, like I could see it right now in the background. It's rearranging stuff as I don't get this done. It goes, okay, boop. It's it's a personal assistant largely. I think we're pretty close to the point where it's going to be. I'll be like, hey, I need to make an appointment with a doctor next week, and it'll do it, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. It's coming. And I'm like you, and I think for our listeners, like if anybody wanted that, well, where do I start? I mean, just go to OpenAI's ChatGPT and
ChatGPT is a great place to start.
just tinker with it. Because I'm like you, I went, I think, way too hard, way too fast. But I'm like you too. I started a resources document. I probably have about 50 of them on there. But like you, I was like, this isn't solving the problem I'm trying to solve now. I just don't need to go down that rabbit hole. I have, you got to keep the main thing the main thing. But I kept them there because, like you, now I'm like, oh, I bet I can leverage AI to help with this, or because there's a meal and I can't imagine if I like looked into this all day every day because I came up with I found 50 different good ones I've heard through
Like that.
Yeah, and it's wild, and now they're all probably 100 times better since from a month ago when I went through it. But I don't know, it's exciting times. But I agree. I think that learning how to use it and run it, and just maybe pick one thing at a time, play with it, and then you can start going to multiple departments in your company. Hey, because it'll open up, your brain will start going, oh man, it helped me expedite this process. What about this process in this department? Or job descriptions in HR. Like that'll like done. You don't have to go like come up like it'll give you the starting point. You tweak it specific to your company, add your little lingo, whatever, and then done. Like there's so many plays with it. It's just.
I mean, it's such a time saver. Like if I was HR and I need to come up with job descriptions, I would just load up all the other job descriptions we've already had and say, hey, this is the new job. Please write a description. I mean, that's all it would take. No other input required, and it would
Hmm.
be perfect.
Yeah. And if you need to tweak it, you could like drop, a paragraph company bio and your core values or whatever and say, hey, add these in, done.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
you have, it's
I've got a GPT thread right now where I feed it. I've got a template of information I feed it, but then it'll look at the information I gave it and it sends out emails, collections emails. It's a 30-day email. It's a 35-day email. It's a 40-day email. It just escalates up, according to what I told it to escalate up to, but is writing these emails that traditionally, yeah, just collections in restoration companies, right? It's a full-time deal. You need a full-time employee handling these things. And if you don't have that, that's where you're just getting behind and behind, behind, right? So leverage AI so you don't have to, yeah, maybe you're $1 million operator and you're about to be a $2 million operator, right? Instead of hiring another body, have the existing person leverage AI so it increases their productivity 2x, 3x, 5x, and you keep your overhead down, but you actually increase your productivity.
yeah, yeah,
That's where AI is going to be properly leveraged. It is going to replace humans, but it's going to replace dumb humans, not
yeah,
smart ones.
yeah. Just yeah. You either learn to ride it or you get run over by it, right? You got a couple options there.
Right. And what I
um,
say is good, bad, or indifferent, make a decision because the road of life is paved with flat squirrels that couldn't make a decision.
yeah,
So make a decision. And if it's a wrong decision, guess what? You get to make a different decision later on. Learn from it and go.
yeah,
But this indecision paralysis, this analysis paralysis a lot of guys feed into, well, I want to do the best AI or I want to do the best XYZ. Well, perfect is never going to happen. And it's going to prevent you from making decisions, which is prevents you from making forward progress. So make a decision, just decide. And you get to change your mind. That's the magic of being a human being. You get to take in more information. Oh, based on my experience, this wasn't such a good idea. I'm going to come up with a different idea. I'm going to take a different tack now based on past experience. Yeah, there's no one that's going to do this perfectly, but there are people that are going to try and fail and try and fail and try and fail. But I'm a huge fan of I'm keep dropping these isms, but fail fast, fall forward.
yeah, yeah. And we have a saying in our country too: "Done is better than perfect." Like when you think about it all day, that's not gonna like
Always.
speed of
Always.
execution is what matters, right? And that goes into the ism too. Like money loves speed. Like it's
Mhm.
you gotta get going and yes, you will hit roadblocks along the way, speed bumps. That's life. That's business. Get over it, right? Pick your head up and keep going. Learn from it. And just don't stop.
Yeah.
Um,
The
but yeah,
obstacle is the way.
yep. Yeah, it's a good book actually. I've read that one. That's a and
It's a
actually
great book.
when you're talking about I haven't read this one in a while. I should revisit it. But Think and Grow Rich, classic.
Mm.
I'm pretty sure decisiveness is one of the principles.
Hmm.
Make a decision. Like
Just make a decision.
yeah, it's another good book. The Obstacles Away, very good book too. Cool. Well, we're coming up on the hour here, so
Okay.
we'll wrap it up. So if somebody wants to learn more about you, your company, your Facebook group, what's the easiest way for them to find you?
Yeah, email me, andy@claimsdelegates.com. And if you're a restorer and you want to get into the Rebel group, it's just search for Restoration Rebels on Facebook. And you got to fill out a couple questions, right? We don't just let everybody in there. Um, but then we'll rock and roll. We'll get you in and get you going. Um, and always here, I want to help, right? If you're not a good fit for my company, we'll find out, but don't be afraid to ask me the question.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, Andrew, appreciate your time. This was awesome. I'd like to get you back on here again. I think we covered a lot of different topics with a lot of good stuff. So yeah, everybody, you know where to find them. Go to Google Claims Delegates, Andrew. You'll find the Restoration Rebels Facebook group, and
Yeah.
continue the conversation there. But
And get on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, Andrew G. McCabe.
yeah,
It's a great place to start.
awesome. All right, well that wraps up this episode of the Restoration Success Show. Till next time, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
See ya.